is the Israel-Hamas war. Current bystanding of what is proactive there is coming at to a divine segment causeway, the last stand. Now, if numerical order of events, you pay attention to things going at hand of the so-called revelations into the divine book, if you want to believe that or not, they have codings in it. They have coded through numeral sets and even timelines through other indexers played out that they have found, through documentation. Even the Vatican would hide. What happens when Israel hits a bystanding code against another? And it sets back, and it puts a setback against this country. There is a hint out of the last divine stand.
Hey everybody, welcome to episode 39. Blue, how are you?
I'm good today, Mike.
Hey, what are we going to talk about today in episode 39?
Well, one of the things we'll be discussing about is the different acclimated points of the UFOs and or star units and representation dealing with military and government protocols through secret sectors and affirmation points that, especially within the 10 to 15 year span, or what have been diagnosed and mainstreamed outward. For people yet to understand in Percival why they are working alongside Air Force, why certain Space Force perimeters were outer aligned through this, and what Area 51, Pentagon, SpaceX, and the reposition of several acquired force attainment codes were placed outwards.
Wow, sounds like we got a bunch to dive into. Hey, before we do, I want to thank everybody for tuning in. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. If we're not on your preferred platform, let us know where that is, and we'll do our best to get on there. But you can catch us most anywhere. And also, hey, make sure you go ahead and click on like, subscribe, and click on notifications so you're notified when we post new material. Blue, let's get right into it.
Think about more into the Galactic Summits meetings. With those Galactic Summits meetings, through the incursal effects of the timelines itself, had maintained codes of ethics and polarized in through several star units to co-opt and work through certain governmentals and high secret societies and foundations through space organizations itself. These type of star units, especially through the new reformal actions through Space Force and the Guardians, have maintained certain codes of ethics that can be moved forward through space and the codes of time. Some of these star units and representation had maintained and dealt with those that are the higher definition points that deal through military ops through SpaceX incursion through the geometric platforms that go and correlate through lateral terms of star units in camouflage setting. To maintaining code of ethics, there are several outputs. The ones in camouflage setting that go and co-op through the actual hemisphere itself, maintain those in diagnosis through several outputs in several areas in those indexers. Those camouflage scenes are maintained through higher definitions through Cosmic Federation protocols. Those that enact through Star Force perimeters. So if you are seeing an encloaked diaphragm of these certain representation movement speeds, and they looked in close speed to a choreographic between cloud cover and the actual hemisphere itself, they are proactive to the lower hemisphere. These proactive star units deal with main coordinated events. They are seen more frequently within the last 5 to 10 years because they are more advanced through the system's matrix code.
You know, I've often look at the sky, I look at the stars, I look during the daytime, and I often think I see things. Is that a possibility, or am I not at the point where I can perceive these things and I can see these things? Maybe I'm just imagining it.
Well, these certain diaphragms of these star units in reposition turn into the replication processing speeds of what species they interact for, whether they are a Neuralink standard and bypass movement speeds into metric status waves, or their diaphragm itself is maintained through the codes of ethics of different correlated subspecies. This itself has maintained higher codes of ethics. There are star units through the Pleiades systems that have a color variation code. Those through representation, higher definition points through the main council of old. They have been seen more frequently. They look like ovular tubes in the sky. They light up sometimes. They are more of a higher Federation standard that hit it in between the waters of the substantial enforced movement speeds of the matrix itself. So they are more seen through lateral terms in between nodes of effect. There's also the ones of the Sirius starport ships. Those Sirius starport ships are in correlation to what geometrics would stand for. It looks more like rocks in space. The geometrics that outer align with that sometimes have hidden agendas through meteorites or other types of sub-inlets that go from the outer disk of space down into the Earth itself. The formalization codes hide in through their camouflage. They are incooperative, meaning they could work both ways.
You know, you brought up a couple things there, and one is you said about an oval tube. Is that why sometimes in this time of disclosure where things are being dripped out, is that why sometimes we hear about an unidentified object as being like a tic-tac, like a giant tic-tac? Is that what you were meaning?
Yeah, well, the ovular effect through that cymatics tone means that it's a hyperdimensional shift. Because it's able to light up upon interface, it means it is moving in between dimensions, and it has a hyper-calling code through it. The ovular tubes, through the main board units, through the Pleiades sector, the Nordic sector, we maintain order. They also have humans working alongside in set order. That is why they have the Galactic Council Summits meeting. That is why that hidden agenda was obtained through numerology of points with several leaders and elites across the planet through the timelines.
You had also mentioned rock-like formations. Not long ago, there was a big thing in the news here about something that was cylindrical and rock-like called Oumuamua, which was coming through this, you know, it looked like it was coming toward us or at us. And they, you know, they always do that in the headlines. Oh, it's coming right for us, but it's like X amount of light years away. And, you know, it's just deceiving sometimes when they try to grab those headlines. But is that what you meant? Like that Oumuamua, that cylindrical shaped rock object that could actually
that's
be?
Different. The ovular shape, what looks like a tube, is metallic alloy. And it's not rock in any interface. That's different. It's Pleiades Nordic sector. It is something more similar to the aspect of a hyperdimensional in-wave node. This other thing you're talking about is similar, but it's not. It is rock formality speed, and it runs through the Sirus ingrading points. The Sirus galaxies, as well as those that run through portals inoculated through the archons. They are neutral, like I had stated before. Their bystander can go both ways. That's why they have to monitor with these indexers going in and out of the matrix itself, especially those that run on force itinerary codes.
Wow. That's a lot of stuff to digest. And folks, again, a reminder, if you're like me, I always go back and I listen again. And if you hear us reference something in a previous show, you can always go back to the video library and you can always pull up by the timestamp on an episode and go right to that theme, right to that title of that segment there. So by all means, go back and listen to it again. What are we going to talk about next, Blue?
Well, next thing we'll talk about is the Israel-Hamas War. Current bystanding of what is proactive there is coming at to a divine segment causeway, the last to stand. Now, if numerical order of events, you pay attention to things going at hand of the so-called revelations into the divine book, if you want to believe that or not, they have codings in it. They have coded through numeral sets and even timelines through other indexers played out that they have found, through documentation. Even the Vatican would hide. What happens when Israel hits a bystanding code against another? And it sets back, and it puts a setback against this country. There's a hint out of the last divine stand. When this happens, this is wake up calling code 101. This is happening. This takes a stand into motion. We need to set a priority effect and step away from the negativity that is being polarized out. Because if we do not, those that are set up in Hamas, those that are set up as refugees will be polarized inwards from the outside. They will maintain their movement elsewhere and cause a whole extra chaos in grading points, a whole extra line of chaos. We cannot put into a better law and reformation upon this grid and set in order what's right for peace, prosperity, and moving forward. This is going to create a big setback, stopping the last generative war. End that. Move something positive forward, because that is the eye-opener right now. This is divine proclamation that is being motorized into action. And this is another thing that is being set into motion of what others need to understand, of certain cracks opening up in the lands itself. Agarthan is opening up from the inside out. And because it is opening up from the inside out, it is creating Percival events of portals and indexers, especially near Yellowstone Park. These are all mass awakenings to the on protocols of the divine. What is setting into effect and what action needs to be now taking place.
You know, you had mentioned a couple of things which really caught my attention there. And the first, of course, is the biblical reference. Of course, you're talking about in the book of Revelations, Armageddon. And if I'm catching what you're tossing out here, this is that event. This is what we're talking about right here, right now.
Yes, it's the last divine stand.
Wow, that puts it feels powerful. It feels like a lot to understand that this is a biblical reference and this is happening. We're actually living through things. And I know you can go back and you can reinterpret things, but these are things that we've talked about for years. And I never imagined that in my lifetime I would experience biblical prophecy. Like I always thought, oh, that's going to be way in the future, or that happened a long time ago. Like I couldn't reference it. Now I feel closer than ever to that, to Revelations, to the Bible, to the prophecies, I don't know what I should do, what I should feel. I feel kind of anxious about it. Is that something normal? There's nothing I can do or say to change anything. Nothing can stop this, right?
No, it's just something that's moving forward into between two lateral terms. Dissecting the advancements of one thing, moving into another. Now, setting into this, it also goes into the deep signal of what needs to be played out next and mentioned. Mankind doesn't understand the evolvement form of the Mason symbol, the logo. They think it's bad, most do, but others do not understand the deeper meaning and representation for the actions that are placed for those that do right upon the degenerative node. This goes into more ancient. This was an add-on symbol of the ancients itself. There is an extra add-on symbol, and I gave it to you possibly. If not, I will. And it was created through the Higher Star Brethren's node of effect, through the Ancient Council of Old. It means G. It's an action performed in the presence of God, the Grand Architect. That is what it really stands for. And to those that are willingly able to move forward in their life mode, maintain codes of ethics that ancient councils of the higher galactics had in order, and that order was set proper. And the proper order got dysfunctional over time. If we can find an action and perform that action in the name of the highest power of all, the power of life, we can maintain codes of ethics and finally establish what proper doctrine that this actual symbol represents, not what people want to think the Masons represent. And if there are negative ones, they need to stand down to their own perimeters. They find out through the Grand Architect itself that they had a motivation set back way before certain timeline injunctures. Maintaining stabilization upon 3 different interlinks, 3 different pyramids of trilateral infernal timelines, meaning that there's an incursal event that has to be played out again. And those have to find their stabilization through that processing speed, including those on the higher elites platform. Working way up the platform of the trilateral, meaning don't downsize yourself, turn it around, find a stable point up the ladder, and equalize it for the whole entire planet. This is one thing that is not being equalized currently, and they're trying to downfall the engram point of the forces of life itself. Let's find a way to distribute an understanding for this again.
You know, I hear you talking about the Masons, and of course, in recent history, and I say recent relative to the span of recorded history, you can go back to the Knights Templar, you can go back and you can appreciate that this battle or this presence has been here for a long time, and it just resurfaces in different ways. I'm really curious though, and I want to be clear, the Messianic things that we're talking about here, these are positive forces, these are evil forces, or there's some good and some bad?
It has been mixed within the last few generations. And that mix has caused humans to misunderstand the real events of what played out here. If we can play vital roles again and move this forward like it should be, we could obtain bringing back a better formation for the distributions of life upon the realm.
You know, you had mentioned about the 3 pyramids, and the number 3 appears a lot in Messianic lore, if you would. The number 33, the highest degree Mason you could be is number 33, a 33 degree Mason. If you look around, there's a famous beer that has 33 as a symbol. If you look around cities like Washington, D.C., the cornerstones were laid by Masons and they have that Messianic symbol on them. The layout of Washington, D.C. has several reference points and certain numerical references to the Masons. I feel like we're on the right side of history. I feel like I'm in with the positive forms of the Masons here. Is that so? Is America, the United States of America, and by the way, most U.S. presidents have been Masons throughout history, going back to Washington days. Are we on the right side of history here? Are we with the good guys here in the United States?
Well, the current platform of effect, the current agenda speed running the program here in the United States isn't. but we can reform better events if we play vital roles for the proper leaders here. And that goes in what you said, that the trilateral platforms to answer certain questions at hand. It means Trinity. The three, the third lateral terminology point, it means Trinity code, the pure effect of the element of the force itself. It is the third paradigm effect. It means the Father. To humans, it would mean the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit in one point, in one turn. That is why they have 3 different points for the pyramid. It goes into a divine recursion node, as well as something that's more advanced.
Wow. Well, I'm sure we could talk all day about this, but I definitely want to move on here. But I do want to touch on one thing. Just before we talked about the Masons, you had mentioned about fissures. You had mentioned about the land opening up. You had mentioned Yellowstone. I saw in the news recently that there's been some openings in Greece. There's been opening in Iceland, and they fear that there's going to be a volcanic eruption there. Is this just my imagination, or does this coincide with what we were talking about with Revelations?
Well, it also opens up to the Agarthan realms and certain portals of events. There are incursional effects of the realms of the inner worlds opening up and creating electromagnetic difference lines. Those electromagnetic difference lines co-ambulate through revelations of what you're perceiving. Except to the fact that you have main events of certain negative aspects that could be polarized upward from underneath. Those need to be maintained and watched out for and monitored by Starlink and SpaceX organizations themselves. Why I ask? Because they have negative realms that still have high definition points with certain actuators of beings that are not on good terms here. Wow. Another event placed under the high rolls that they could create a subatomic and magnetic polarity sphere. Certain magnetic polarity spheres through the magma itself in areas of higher elevations need to be monitored as well, because that could cause a problem.
Crazy times we're living in. I'm glad we're able to dissect this and digest what's going on in the world today and make it relative to things we've been taught and things we thought we knew and things that we do know throughout history. What's next on our agenda today?
Well, we're going to be talking about the SCP organization. SCP-848, the Interdimensional Spiderweb. Now, it's a colony of Nephiliacubus, golden silk orb weavers, aka banana spiders. Sure, many have heard about what they are. They're huge, they're big. Now, the specimens are approximately 15% larger and significantly stronger, though, than the normal species and faster at hand. But generally, they're no more dangerous than a typical spider, so they do not pose threats to mankind. Do not exhibit any particular hostility towards mankind as well. The web was created as a normal web, but it also creates an enormous off-term reaches diameters and speeds of 5 meters or more. Because they're huge webs. Now, but listen very good. These are interdimensional weave webs, meaning that these type of arachnids more or less could have been maintained from another altered dimension. They could have come from Agartha. They could have been maintained through an altered realm through scientists. The fabrication speeds is our sus. They can create webs that could subatomically move particles in. Those type of webs through that subatomic can create anonymous objects and polarize them inwards. Some of them objects, if not most of them, are maintained through insects of unknown origin. Various kinds of scraps of inanimate objects, including paper and plant debris. And as well as when this happens, they also have been logged several unidentified organisms were exposed to oxygen and may not be terrestrial in origin. This is a certain type of web portal thus created by these beings. You not harm mankind. They feed on insects, higher, just like a regular insect themselves, but they create a vortex stream that can bring things in.
It's all fascinating to me because way back, like when horror movies first came out, they always took like insects and they made them these giant beings, like they were from another planet or something, and spiders and so forth. And when you watch sci-fi, somebody getting caught, it was a human getting caught in a giant spider web, looked like ropes, and then the spider would come out, and it had all these eyes, and it's really fascinating to me that spiders seem to frighten us, but they, like you had said, they feed on insects, and they, when you find one in your house, you're not excited. Some people are startled by them tremendously. Some people don't like spiders and snakes. Some people don't like certain things. But what I'm getting from you is this is just another being here, and this is the interdimensional version of this. Is this something that I could accidentally bump into, or is this really contained?
I'm sure that there are several indicators out there that they don't know of yet, especially through numerous rainforests that are still unexplored. But the ones that they have and capture, they have a certain area of effect to keep it in. And they monitor it, and they monitor the webs that they create and index in through those portals, the certain objects and or insects that accumulate through that, because they are from another terrestrial mode of event. They are not of this planet's origin.
Speaking of people fearing things, a lot of people fear clowns, and I see you have this other one here, Bobble the Clown. I'm real interested in this.
Well, it's a television series program entitled Bobble the Clown, which first began airing. Of course, they're not going to say the date, but a little while back ago, I'm sure, was still seen to have color. Main is educational cartoon. Primary plot of most episodes being the character Bobble the Clown learning a new skill or activity. The program appears to have no supporting cast, and the setting of the program often changes between episodes. Now, what happens is children under the age of 10 viewing SCP later report that it teaches and advocates activities as cannibalism, murder, torture, etc. And it puts it into their mindset and ingrains it into their neural brain matter waves. And it can cause the negative repercussions to come upon those child units under the age of 10. They can self-diagnose against that mainstream and cause their own neural affairs to act out to what that actual program initiated them with. Remember, like mind ensnarement node, how we had talked before, how they broadcast already on news about things and it ensnares the mind. And after so long of ensnaring the mind, the mind's programmed into that. It's similar, but it has a different psyche wavelength, and it can create more havoc. I'm saying there are a lot of things in the news similar, but on a more of a lower wavelength. But still, you get what I mean. Now,
yes. It's subtle. It's very subtle, and I flash back to my youth. I used to watch Bozo the Clown in the Northeast United States where I lived. That was the thing to watch all the time. It wasn't a lot of programming. You had 3 channels, and if the president was on, you were done. He was on all 3 channels. But what I'm saying is the fear that people have today toward clowns, is it directly in reference to this Bobble the Clown?
No, this is just a program speed that was manually set from a higher definition point to lower the modulation code. There are other representations like episodes or doctrine events through movies and indicator speeds and channels. Even similar ones like Tom and Jerry. They have movies and foundations and episodes through that cut off for a reason, because they have a neural injuncture point that can affect the minds of mankind. Now, with the clowns, that has nothing to do with that. As far as I'm concerned, clowns are, they're funny. People shouldn't have fear of them.
It's amazing to me that you had also mentioned programming, And that's what they used to call TV shows. You know, people from the greatest generation of World War II generation, I can always remember them here. I got to watch my program, the TV program or the program on TV. And we buy these things. And it's amazing to me. We've kind of gotten away from that terminology. But it's amazing to me that we are still talking about program.
Anyone over the age of 10 will immediately fall unconscious when they hear this programming speed. So those under it, and they will begin to remain incapacitated to the end of the program. So they're left in an unconscious state of quota. Those under it could may become more of a havoc onto their neural capacity wavelengths. So with this itself, they have it shut down. They have it blocked from the public in protocol Epsilon Beta 3 from viewing. So nobody can even see this anymore. SCP-992, Gaia's Emissary. SCP-992 is an elderly Australian Aborigines male of ethnicity, I can't say the name, 12 meters tall, weighing 95 kilograms, claims to be between 57 and 71 years. But hear this, the Foundation has had him a lot longer than that, and he has never aged. So the manualization effect is this, he could be several hundred years, and nobody knows it. So contained, not appearing to age, the subject itself, when left alone, it converses with various plants and foliage. And it sees prophetic visions through that of the exclamation points of an incursion event of what can happen upon the actual realm with the elementals, with the weather. Now, it holds a one-sided conversation and will frequently allude to vague natural events. It alludes to the natural events, but it is aware of this being and the political natural disasters at hand. It's able to observe the weather pattern and the perception of the human beings observe unusual and nonsensical weather around it. It's able to manipulate the weather patterns because it has a lock-in principle to another SCP. And this being, this man himself, he's wrinkly, he's like a charcoal type of skin. But he has an athleticism about him. Subjects, when they're dealing with it and they viewed, when he deals with anomalous effects with the weather, they've been able to refer themselves or anyone else by their names. They kind of lose their neural injuncture points for certain affairs if they see this being on site. When there's certain anomalies happen, and it goes into SCP-2255, the most interesting rainstorm in the world. Once he's able to lock up and diagnose the metric status quota between himself and this, what this is an accumulus cloud. They work together. Cumulus cloud, weather phenomenon, takes a shape. And it also takes the shape of a feminine goddess form. Speaking English, low-pitched male voice though. So that means it has that god-goddess formational code because it is a recursion to two events. The altitude ranges 12 meters. It has a strong aromatic scent. The aromatic scent, when uncovered into universal events, and also the self-programming seeds that maintained through this run on a certain island itself, and they monitor the island's perimeter because of it.
You think there's any connection here to HARP?
No, not with this being. This being's generated different and is more on a defined sector that activated of something of old. Remember how we had discussed about Cain before, Cain and Abel? They're kind of closer to proximity, run on different divine order, and they can affect the elemental and biowave movement streams. They have anonymous properties that could core manually set into something that could affect the areas that they are in. The fractal event that maintained between two divine beings, especially the one through the Cumulus cloud, reigns on a certain island itself. But like I said, it's monitored, and sometimes proactive scenes can be maintained between 2 points of events. because the other one's able to move the other in through its neural wavelength. But they monitor both because it could cause a negative catastrophe or negative destabilization point because of the elementals.
Wow. And just like that, we're almost out of time here. We got a little more than 4 minutes here. I do want to touch on a couple quick things here. Is there anything to report from the Space Force and the Federation, your positions there?
Yes, a Starlink accessing point to the main Starship unit, the second one, proposition took off this morning, dealing with Elon Musk. Now, lateral term, there will be several indicators in the near future for us starseeds and beings like us to move forward between this and the generators of the cosmos. This star unit and representation has a few beings inset in its proximity to maintain distribution upon several link-ups in the cosmos. So this is a good thing for mankind that could be hopefully maintained on a proper sphere. But also, this designates what could be moved into the future reference of the matrix itself, going around the bubble, around the waters of the waters. What you had discussed with me and showed me a video of. There are ways to get into space. You can go right through, but it has a fortification bubble screen. That bubble screen is not allowed on perimeter for anyone just to go through. They have ways to self-diagnose in aerodynamic fields once maintained an ingrading point, that the equivalence to the X dimension timelines itself can be redistributed. Teleportation portals through Arctech, Raytech, aqua tube tunnel systems that can be maintained from underneath, and the priority sphere as interdimensional time incubation codes itself. All right, the dome's docile intern ways have several indicators to move around it, the firmament. Two of them deals with the Versa fields. The Versa fields can correlate between two actions. One, to manually manipulate the electromagnetic in-grade balancing streams between one indicator and the next. So when a star unit jumps from one formational speed to the other, it creates a hyperloop, and it opens up the matrix's bubble creation waves. So that way they are formally put into one agenda into the next timeline. It's like similar to the picture I had given you. They have a star unit, and it looks like it's going through the waters. This is a hint of time skip or time looping itself. Time jumping. Jumping from one paradigm shift to the other because they're a way to manually manipulate the electrons and the electromagnetic distribution frequency tones that go from one dimension to the other within seconds. That is one thing that could be a main housing unit for the future of the societies of mankind soon.
Wow. You know, that's crazy. And I definitely want to come back and revisit the firmament. There's biblical references that this is a real thing that I've never really understood the concept until I had sent you that video not long ago. So I definitely want to come back and revisit this. All right, let's get into ET of the week.
Yes, the Sirus Max Lumeia. Lumeia gray interdimensional mix capable of family accumulated speeds and generated timeline turnout directives. Extra eyelid membranes capable of advanced night vision, electromagnetic radar impulses, non-blinking apparatus motions, and selective mantoid laws allow the subcultures to co-create and fund extra-dimensional trade-in firms. Selected clones format under child units and reposition to formal X-Furon genetics. Growth to 100 to 125 years in advancement format. Neural injunctions to the adults format to conservative stasis, high psyche awareness, intelligence over 1500 to 34 or 3450 IQ percentage mode. that extends to a 400 to 945 year lifespan. Symmetric supersonic hearing capabilities are able to telepathically reformulate and in-tune balancing string between themselves and others. Generally, they have hypermolecule advanced skin, which is thick enough, like closer to the membrane of elephants and other creatures of the sort, tough to be able to extend to tougher environments itself.
Now, of course, the question I always ask, good guy or bad guy?
In between stasis, but more on the positive reflux codes, one of the ancient councils of the Lemurian societies itself, Lumeia, Mount Shasta, and grading portal events to the Taros and Talos societies.
The advanced night vision really captures, in my mind, this seems like a nocturnal creature, if that makes any sense. I'm not sure if that is relatable to an extraterrestrial, but here we have nocturnal creatures on the planet. Is that safe to say this is more a nocturnal creature?
It's both, but it has a perception line that can see at night to a certain paradigm shift. It, like an owl, if you will, how it's able to have a sightseeing awareness in certain other mainstream events. Its coordinates has an extra personal node of a membrane inside its eye. That's why they have certain animals or certain species already that have extra eye membranes. They even had it through similar projects as speed so that people would understand to the movie Men in Black. The first one where this kid itself, where Will, whoever his name was, chasing him. He blinked twice. One blinked one way, one blinked the other. He had two sets of pupils, or two sets of membranes. There are a lot of higher species that have two sets of membranes. That's why they don't have to blink as much into their actions or tones. Animals have it too, but not all of them. Humans don't have it because they don't generate that type of membrane in their eye. Some humans that have advancement codes like ourselves as starseeds, myself and others, we don't have to blink as much. We have a higher generator. That could happen for people, and there are inoculated events. So we talked about tribes before that are able to sightsee underwater in certain areas. The Mohawk tribe, we talked about that in another show. Go back to your homework, people. If you go back, you'll see it. It's real, but it runs in through DNA lines. There are so many more types of DNA lines that humans can have an intact node for, just like the higher beings.
Wow, it's fascinating stuff. And just like that, we got to wind it up. I want to thank everybody for watching. Thank everybody for listening. Blue, episode 39 in the books. Great stuff today.
Yep. Thank you, Mike.
All right, we'll see you next time.